Welcome to the Celaya podcast. This is a special episode with my best friend, Dakota Pierce.
What's up, guys?
Clap it up, clap it up. So Dakota and I, we kind of go back, like, it's probably since birth, really, if you think about
28 years,
it.
baby, and counting.
Yeah, like, I was probably there at your birth. Like, I'm, 3 months older than you are?
Yeah.
And we've been friends pretty much ever since. So we kind of went, let's see. We played on, how many sports teams we played on the other? We played basketball.
It had to have been more than a dozen teams.
We played basketball. We played football. We played
baseball. Did we?
Were you on baseball? You were on Cubs? You were on?
Yes.
We got to tell that story then. So we were on baseball. We played a lot of sports together. And then obviously your dad was our coach for years. And we played club basketball for a long time, every weekend.
That's right, every weekend. 4,
5, 6, 7 games. It was super fun. So yeah, we go way back. And we played football. You're the quarterback. I was the
throwing those
slot receiver. We had one play that mattered, basically, which was
long for a deep post.
Deep post, and then you'd be chucking that thing.
And I threw it out there, and I said, "Austin, you catch it."
Yeah, I remember.
Throw it, you catch it.
I remember just going, and the second, like, I'm not even cutting to the post yet, and the ball is already way up there. I'm already like going, like, okay, I know exactly where I got to go for this thing. But you would just sit back there and just chuck that thing so far, and I'd barely get it. I'd barely even get it close to that
some
thing.
Rainbows for
Yeah,
you.
we had a lot of touchdowns from that.
I wonder how many touchdowns we threw.
Yeah, probably, I don't know. We had a lot.
Dozen?
Anyway, so the point of this podcast is we're going to talk today kind of about, we're going to talk about success. So I feel like in the world today, there's a lot of people that like want success, but there's not really a roadmap to get it. And so obviously you have had success in your life up to this point. I mean, obviously we're both still young, so we're kind of still starting out in life, but I would say up to this point, like if you look at just like your resume and your credentials or whatever it is that you want to say, you've had a lot of success. So can you take us through kind of like your mindset? Because I remember, because we went to high school together, and I remember you were valedictorian, obviously. What, you had like a 4.6 GPA? Was that what it was? Or 7?
4.8, I think.
4.8? Okay, so it's basically high as you can kind of get, right? And I remember you always, I think I was in one class with you. But
APR history.
That
was a time.
That was a crazy class. That was fun.
Another podcast.
Yeah, and we had all of our buddies in that class on like one table, and that was a good time. We had Colby Wadman with us, who also played in the NFL. Anyways, so we had, at least I had a lot of time to kind of just see like you working in school, and I noticed that you would work very hard in school. So obviously, if you're going to get a 4.8, you're going to work hard. So going back to then, what made you? Well, let's just fast forward a little bit. So obviously now, like, let's fast forward past high school. Like, you went to MIT, which was a very prestigious school, and then you interned at NASA, JBL, which is obviously everybody knows NASA, and then you worked at Apple headquarters in Cupertino, and they had you in China as well. And you then went to, what was it, Podium?
Yep. Software
company in Utah. So you've had a lot of like experiences in these very techie / high companies, like high quality companies, very big companies, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, but obviously your success didn't just start from there. So like, take us back to like the beginning. Like, when did you start to realize like I need to basically put myself out there in more of a way than maybe other people would be doing normally to achieve that success? Like, when was the first time that you kind of realize what that was, and how did you, like, you know what I'm saying?
No, it's a great question. I think in elementary school, I remember I'd get like B's. I don't know, maybe some C's. I can't remember. I think mainly B's, and I was pretty normal. I mean, that's normal, right? Like, no, I wasn't a bad student. I wasn't a good student. But then I remember in middle school, I don't remember what clicked, but I remember being like, oh, like, I can get A's. I can get just A's.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what clicked, but I think maybe part of it was this idea of like beginning with the end in mind, right? We hear that a lot, but I think it's really powerful where like I was like, okay, at the end of the semester, I'm going to have 6 A's, for these 6 classes. So what do I need to do to make that happen? Because that's what I'm going to sacrifice to make happen. And I think there's the other side of it where there's certain things you don't want to sacrifice to make that happen. But when you're willing to sacrifice a lot to see that through, then it like pushes a lot of other things to the side.
Yeah.
When you set that like the end goal in mind, you could draw out your report card or whatever it could be. But in this case, it was grades. I think that's helped me a lot, because then when we're sitting in AP art history class, you and me, and there's 20 minutes of downtime, right? And I'm like, oh shoot, like I got to get all my A's. Then I'll jump to the other class and I'll start grinding on my homework from the other class in AP art history, working on AP US history and AP art history. And so that kind of keeping the end in mind made me, I think, really productive in a sense, where I was just like, okay, when I'm throughout the entire school day, I'm always working on this, because it always has to happen. And so when there's any downtime in one class, I'm working on their class. So I think that's probably one of the initial things I realized. I don't think I realized it consciously. I just it's just one day I was like, oh, like this is what I want. And I kind of set that vision for myself. And I think I've kept doing that throughout my life. I think in some of those other things you've talked about, it was just like, oh, I got to get this internship. Like, I'm going to get this internship, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this internship, or I'm going to get this job. I'm going to do whatever it takes to achieve this vision.
So it's like whatever task you have at hand, you're thinking about the end right from the start.
Yeah. So like right now it's like, okay, like I'm starting a business. So it's like, okay, like I have to make $2,000 a month to survive, based on this software that I built.
Yes.
So whatever it's going to take to get that $2,000 a month is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so nothing else matters.
So once you I guess going back into like middle school, and you like realized that you could get A's, all A's.
Yeah.
And you saw it through, and like you got your first report card of all A's. Were you able to was it how did that feel after? Was it pretty motivating? Like, did you realize, okay, if I can do this, there's I can apply the same concept to pretty much anything else in life? Yeah,
totally. I mean, it was just like, wow, like whatever I can go get my vision.
Yeah.
Like a lot of what happens to me is in my control. Like, right. Like I can't control totally what grade the teacher gives me.
Right.
And it's not like I've never gotten a B in my life since then, but like a large part of my destiny can be controlled by what my vision is and what I'm willing to sacrifice for.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
absolutely.
It was invigorating.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure. And then you've obviously applied that in everything else that you've done since. So you served a mission for your church as well, right?
Yeah.
And so take us through that experience. You served in Singapore.
Yep.
Right.
And Malaysia.
A
year in each place. Yeah.
Okay. And so you were speaking what languages?
Mandarin, Chinese mostly, some English, some broken English, Singlish they call it.
Yeah.
And also some Malay.
Yeah.
And some Tamil, actually. Lot of languages.
So 4 or 5
so
around
in
there?
Singapore and Malaysia, all of the signs are in 4 languages. So
okay.
Mandarin, Malay, Tamil, English.
Yeah.
So you look at the side of the road, there's 4 languages.
Oh, really? On each sign, there's 4 languages?
Yeah, in Singapore especially. Sometimes in Malaysia, not as more just Malay, but.
Okay. So your main language, that was Mandarin, right?
Yeah, for me it was Mandarin Chinese. Yeah.
How was it learning Mandarin Chinese, and did you apply that same idea that you had before, where it's like, I'm going to just fully learn this? Like, is that how you kind of learned it within that short time?
I think I took a different approach to like learning language than some people would, sit in a classroom and learn. I would go out to locals. Like we had an hour every day to study the language. Yeah. And so for my hour every day, I didn't sit in my room and study flashcards. I would take my flashcards into the most Chinese part of town I could, and I'd just sit down with people and be like, while they were eating breakfast or lunch or whatever at the table, I'd be like, hey, can you tell me how to use this word in a sentence? Or am I using this right? I would be saying all this in Chinese, right? Yeah. And so that way I could just communicate with locals and have them teach me all day, or not, for that hour every day, and then throughout the day as well. Right. But I think going back to what I was saying, like, I don't know if I consciously thought about it as like keeping the end in mind, but it was like I have this vision of, being fluent. The best way to be fluent is to spend time with fluent people, not to study, like from a book, white people flashcards.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So how long did it take you to actually become fluent?
I think, fluent's a subjective
term. Of course, yeah. Like, but good enough to like have a conversation and like really get away or get around.
Probably about 6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Yeah, after 3 months, I was put in charge of another missionary. We call them missionaries. And so I had to do everything. I had to order the food. I had to set the appointments. I had to knock the doors, whatever. And so when you're doing everything, you learn quick, right? Because you're in charge, so you got to do it all.
You have no choice.
So if you don't know how to do it, you're going to figure it out right now. So that's what. So I'd say after that, so about 6 months, I felt like I could do basically.
So it kind of helped when you got thrown out there, basically, and you had to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of life.
Yeah, jumping in the deep end.
Just jumping in the deep end.
No better way to learn than to do.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Which you've done, which I think is really interesting. So you're learning Mandarin Chinese. You've done it for 6 months, and then you have a year and a half left of time. Yep. So what did you learn in that like period of time?
In the year and a half.
After that, because at that point, then you could speak to the people.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm sure that, maybe you weren't focusing so much on like, okay, what are they saying or what am I going to say? You probably were then able to like talk to people and like interact. What did you learn from that entire experience? Like, did it teach you anything that like you use now today, essentially, or you've used since then?
Yeah, so many things.
Like what?
Well, I mean, first of all, like you don't learn Mandarin in 6 months, so there's still. I mean, I'm still learning Mandarin, and I've gotten worse since my mission. But like that next year and a half, I was still learning Mandarin.
Sure.
I was never totally fluent. No one
It's a
ever
lifetime.
Totally is. Yeah, I mean, we're
situation.
still learning English, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, I think it was more on like the people side, like the culture side. How do I communicate with Chinese people?
Yeah.
And also Malaysian people, and how do I, share an uplifting message to, invite them to come back another time or.
Sure.
For me, missionary work is kind of like sales, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm like selling my own product in my own business, I feel like it's become more applicable in the sense of like, everyone you talk to, you want to ask if they have any friends that, are interested in the church. But in this case, are they interested in my software or whatever?
Yeah.
Those kind of principles I think are invaluable.
Yeah. So like referrals.
Yeah. Talking to everyone, always being open about your ideas. In my case, my business. I think those are some principles, like the people side of the soft skills are, applicable in so many aspects.
So obviously we talked like when you were on your mission, and I remember you constantly telling me about how you would talk to so many people on purpose. Like you would see how many people you could talk to.
Totally.
And you would see how many people you could pray with. You would do like all these kind of things, which I think is really cool. Has that helped you since then? Like, has that helped you in business too? I mean, I'm sure it really was. I'm sure there was times where it was like difficult to talk to people. Maybe you didn't want to. Maybe it was awkward. But like, again, you kind of like jumped into the deep end.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always about, you bring up a great point. I totally forgot about this, but yeah, we used to pray with people.
Yeah.
And I think that is a key point of like sales is like giving them some value.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Or giving them some sort of experience right off the bat. So when we talk to people, we just be like, hey, can we say a prayer for you?
Yeah.
And people are always like, sure.
Sure.
I mean, not always, but often they're like, sure, whatever.
Right.
You can pray for me. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Could always use some extra prayers in my life.
Yeah, of course.
And then we'd pray with them, and then they would feel, like it'd be like a unique experience for them, right? And so they'd feel, God, or they'd feel like something like, oh, this is unique. And then they would remember that. And so then when we asked them to come back a different time, they're like, oh, yeah, I remember this was kind of a unique experience. Maybe I'll give it a second chance.
Sure.
But I think that can be applied to like building a business. Like when you're first talking to people, like you got to offer them some value, or like they're not just going to respond to some cold message with no value add, right?
Right.
So it's like, oh, this is what they offer. This is unique. This is cool. Let me give it another 10 seconds of listening.
Sure.
So I think that kind of experience-based or value-based sharing, I think, is really important.
For sure. And your schedule when you were doing this mission, it was what, 6:30 to 9:30 at night?
No, it was 7 to 11, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Okay.
Strict though, so we work out from 7 a.m. to 7:20 a.m.
Yeah.
20 minutes, and then we'd shower from 7:30 to 8 and eat breakfast, and then I think we started studies at 8:30 a.m. sharp.
Right.
And then we'd be out the door by 10:30 after 2 hours, and then he'd be out there sharing about the gospel of Jesus Christ for
so you're on the
8,
street
9 hours a day,
for the whole day,
10 hours a day, whatever that is.
Every day.
Yeah, basically the whole day, every day. You're out, talking to people. A lot of talking to people. So much talking to people.
Which I'm sure has helped a ton in your business now. Like in business and like
I mean, I think I'm not as extroverted as I once was.
Oh, like on the mission?
I think even before the mission, I was pretty introverted, I'd say. But then on the mission, I became like this extrovert.
Yeah.
And then after the mission, I kind of combed back into that introvert that I once was a little bit more. But yeah, I think those experiences of being able to be the extrovert are helpful in use cases or in different situations.
So I remember on the mission that you were on, like you got called to be in a position where you were like over all of the missionaries, and it was you and it was one other person.
Yeah.
So when you guys look, or I guess when you look at like the attributes that you had and that he had, why do you feel that you were both chosen for that? Like what separated you to be able to run, just like what separated you from the other missionaries to be able to be in charge of what how many missionaries? Like almost 200, 100, 200? I don't know.
Yeah, about 200 missionaries. Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of that in the Church of Jesus Christ, we believe in what's called, the Spirit.
Sure.
And so like when someone's about to, offer a new position in the church or a calling, they'll pray about it and like, what does God feel? So I'm not going to comment on that. So I don't want to say
Sure.
But I think, I think I worked hard.
Yeah.
I think I worked hard, and I think I was generally had the right motivations. And I think that's, when you're working in a team, those things come clear pretty quick.
Yeah.
Of who's working hard and who has the right motivations. And I think my leaders saw that.
Yeah.
And so they kept me as an option to help lead.
And I'm assuming it was the same with your companion, right?
Yeah, I'd say similar. Yeah. But I mean, he especially had a lot of positive energy. I think energy is a big thing.
Energy, yeah, okay.
Like you can have a Debbie Downer that works really hard, but they're kind of annoying to work with, right? And they can still have the right intentions, but they can still be annoying to work with because they're so depressing.
No one's gonna want to be around.
Right. And so I think some positive energy with the working hard is super helpful as a leader. Right?
Sure.
It's like getting people, hyped to go out and
okay, interesting.
People.
Okay, so you have this year where you go to MIT and then you went on this mission, right?
Yep.
And then you come back to MIT.
Yeah.
So what was it like going to MIT? Because a lot of people will never have that experience.
Yeah.
It's obviously like one of the most prestigious schools there is, and you you kind of switched your major twice, right? Or once?
Yeah.
But it was originally what? It was engineering.
I switched from mechanical to computer science to aerospace.
To aerospace
where I
engineering.
landed.
Okay.
So
what was it like being? I mean, what you spent most of your time in aerospace?
Yeah. My first year was crazy, dude. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. MIT, probably most of you have not gone to school yet. Not all of you. It's small. It's small and it's super geeky, super nerdy.
Sure.
Like take the nerdiest person multiply that by 4,000 students, and that's my student body.
Yeah.
Honestly.
But they're probably like crazy smart.
Oh, crazy smart.
Yeah, of course.
Every single kid is a computer.
Yeah, okay.
And I do not claim to be a computer myself. So I was definitely one of the dumbest kids there, I would say.
Okay.
If you just go based on IQ.
Sure.
I definitely worked hard, but so it was tough. I think socially it was tough to adapt to the nerdiness.
Sure.
I was in a fraternity. That was tough. Just because I wasn't used to the fraternity culture.
Yeah.
Coming from like a pretty conservative family background and religious background.
Right.
There's a lot of drinking, some drugs, stuff like that. And then, I think just adjusting, like living on my own. I moved from California to Boston all by myself, playing basketball in the cold every day.
Yeah.
I was on the basketball team. And it was just a totally new experience. And then when I came back from my mission, it was still hard. Like I'd gained all those skills, but it didn't really, I still like it. I don't know, like trying to find friends was still difficult not because I couldn't be friends with all the nerds, just like they weren't that fun for me to hang out with. And I have some really good friends. So if you're listening, don't feel like I'm throwing you under the bus. I'm just saying that like the mass majority of people at MIT were a little different than me, a little more geeky, and they'll probably make more money than me. So how
was like the actual school part? Was it like super difficult?
Oh yeah, it was tough. Yeah,
I imagine it was crazy.
Yeah, I got like a 13% on my first math test, and I had never gotten a B in math ever. And I got a 13%, which is far below F. Pretty low F.
So then how did you go from that to like actually succeeding?
Yeah, I did well. I ended up doing well, but I did fail a couple classes at the beginning, but MIT's gracious and they wiped them from your transcript. So I ended up doing fine. But I figured out, I had the same kind of vision of like, I want to do it good in school. Yeah. So how am I going to do it? Because it's 13% ain't cutting it, right? Yeah,
for sure.
So you have to go back and you sit down with the TAs and you figure out how to study differently and study harder, more efficiently, understand what's better, different. Because I was studying like in high school, and high school study habits weren't cutting it. Yeah. So, and I think I came in kind of cocky, like I thought I was smart. And then I realized quickly I was not smart.
Yeah, like the smartest people in the whole world right there.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not smart.
Yeah. I remember one time we FaceTimed. I don't know exactly when it was, but it was one of those years, and you FaceTimed me, and you were in the cafeteria, and there was like some guy that you introduced me to, and you're like, this guy is like the smartest computer programmer that you'll ever meet. And
my roommate was #1 in India.
Oh, really?
The smartest person to come out of India that year, which is crazy because India is like got over 1 billion people.
Yeah, that's insane.
But for his age, he was the smartest kid.
What is he doing now? Do you know?
I think he's a computer scientist at
Computer
Google.
scientist. Okay, so he can basically program anything.
Yeah, I mean, he was a wizard. We couldn't really hold that good at conversations together. But I don't know if that was more on him or more on me.
Yeah. I mean, hey, he's probably speaking code the whole time.
He was smart. He had his act together.
I'm sure. Well, obviously, he was smartest kid coming out of India. You know, that's
based on test scores. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Okay, cool. So you did that at MIT and you graduate in aerospace?
Yep.
Okay. So you graduate in aerospace, and then what do you do after that?
So I did an internship at NASA, like you said.
So wait, so question then about that. So I don't know if you've seen these TikToks that are kind of going around right now, but like there'll be these TikToks where people will like go to school and they'll be like, I just finished school and I'm like 100 grand in debt and I can't even get a job, like a normal job that pays me like $16 an hour. Like it's like a common theme that I've seen a lot of people, and they just complain and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So how did you go from, now obviously you went to MIT, so you kind of have like a big head start on a lot of people, obviously. Like you get a job pretty much wherever. Yeah. But how do you go from just finishing school to like even knowing what you want to do with that degree, and then even going and getting an internship? How do you get an internship at NASA? You know what I mean? Like how did that whole process work?
No, that's a great question. I mean, I think I remember my sophomore year, I was like, okay, I want to work on like something that's going to Mars. And it's like, okay, well, there's only a couple places that are doing this. It's like SpaceX and NASA. Sure. Like, okay. So like, I'm going to go for NASA because NASA's bigger. Yeah. More places I can work there. Sure. More positions to work for. So I went and talked to the people at NASA, and they said, no can do. You will not be interning here this summer. I was like, why? They're like, you don't have any experience. I don't have any experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to hire someone that has never worked any other job?
Coming out of school.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the middle of school. It was an internship.
I was in, right. Yeah,
I was in the middle of school. I hadn't even finished school yet. Yeah. They're like, we will never hire you. I was like, okay. They're like, get some experience and then come back. Okay. And we'll hire you, or we'll interview you. We'll consider you. You can't work here without ever having any experience. I was like, okay. So I was like pretty down about it. I was like, shoot, like, you know, I got to go find another job first. I don't want to do another job. I want to work on NASA. Right. So like, how can I get some experience this year so that I can go back in the summer, like later this year, go back to the same people that rejected me now in 6 months from now. And so I messaged one of my professors. Well, and it helped that going to MIT, there's a lot of cool professors. Yeah, for sure. So he was like the CTO at NASA. Oh. And he was my professor. And I was like, dude, can I do some research for you? Yeah. Like, we'll count that as experience. So he's like, sure. So I did some research for him, like calculating some orbits for some space mission to Mars that never happened. And then I took that experience. I went back to NASA 6 months later. I was like, hey, like, now I have this cool experience. Like, can I get a job now? Yeah. And I didn't just like I talked to a bunch of people who worked at NASA. I sent them all my resume with this new experience. Right. And I got 2 job offers at NASA, 2 internship offers. Yeah. And I took one of them. So I think just like, if I had just taken the no and been like, oh, shoot, like they're not gonna let me work there, I would never have gotten a job. Sure. But because I said, oh, it's not a no, it's a no, but you need to get experience, then I was like, okay, how can I get experience without working a full-time job? I can do some research. So I was just finding a way, right? I think like people would be more apt to just take the no and run away. Right. Where I was like, you know what? Like, there's got to be a way. Which seems to be a theme with you. Like, you seem to like... I think refusing to take a no. I think taking a no, like, okay, why don't they want to take me? I don't have experience. Okay. Let me go get experience. Let me go get the experience. Not and like, then you no, then have it. It's not a forever no. Like, right. Yeah, and I think being willing to ask, like, why won't you take me? Right. Like, asking them for feedback, I think, was helpful, because if they just said no, then I wouldn't have known, oh, so I need experience. Sure. Which maybe I would have deduced that from my blank resume. Right. But like, but it wasn't obvious, I think. Right. And people will still come to me and be like, how'd you do it? I'd be like, well, go do research first, get some fake experience. Like, my research was not real experience. It was fake experience. Yeah. But to them, it was real. Right. Plus, you were studying under someone that had worked there. It looked real, and it was good. Like, it was real research for a real professor. So it wasn't made up. Yeah, it's not like actually. But it wasn't like I was actually sending something to Mars or anything. And I wasn't making any money. Right. It was all for free. So what was your goal after working, like, or even while working at, doing your internship at NASA? What was the goal? Was it to get a job after? Was it to just put it on the resume? Was it to maybe you didn't even know, but you were just like, this is a great opportunity? I remember I got offered I got that summer, NASA offered me an internship, and then this other company you'd never heard of, another aerospace company, offered me an internship, and that other company offered me $30,000 for the summer, which is a good chunk of money for me, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's internship too, right?
Yeah, but NASA offered me $4,000 for the summer. Big difference, right?
Sure.
Do you know which one I took? The
NASA.
$4,000 one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, why do you think I took that, right? It was because I wanted that brand name, because I knew that would lead to a way bigger paycheck in the long run. So I didn't want the upfront extra $26,000. I wanted the bigger paycheck, and it paid off. I think the only reason Apple ended up hiring me was because I worked at NASA.
At NASA, interesting.
Yeah, and Apple paid me I made way more than that $26,000 that I would have made at this no-name company in the end. So it paid off. What was your question again? Sorry.
Well, I was just asking like what your plan was after NASA.
Yeah. So I went to NASA. I thought I was gonna work there full time, the next year or something, because NASA does pay well. They pay more than $15 an hour, which is what I was making when you're full time. But as an intern, they're pretty cheap. So then I was gonna go back full time, but I didn't love it. I'll be honest. Like I didn't.
What about it did you not like?
I just wasn't cut out to be like the mechanical aerospace engineer I thought I was.
Okay, interesting.
And I really wanted to speak Chinese, kind of go back from mission. And as you might know, NASA and China have nothing in common,
right?
Except they're the biggest competitors.
Yeah,
and
they're kind of opposites.
I thought about trying to work for the Chinese Space Agency for a while.
Okay,
I actually applied, and they were like, "Yeah, we're interested in you, but you got to revoke your U.S. citizenship first."
Really? They're gonna make you revoke it?
Yeah, 100%. And
that's
I was
crazy.
Like, no, I don't love aerospace that much.
Yeah.
So that's when I worked for Apple. I started pivoting. I was like, okay, I want to stay within like, technology realm, tech space. But I got to work for somewhere that deals with China more. And Apple does all their manufacturing. And they did all their manufacturing in China at the time. So like it's a perfect fit. So I emailed some people at Apple, some alumni, and I got a job there working half-time in China, half-time in Cupertino. Yeah. Building MacBooks, specifically MacBook keyboards.
So you were over in China using your Chinese that you'd learned on your mission.
Yep, exactly.
And what were you doing in China? Like you said, you're building the keyboards?
All the factories. There was 2 main factories that built all MacBook keyboards.
Yeah.
So if you use a MacBook, I probably built your keyboard.
I love the keyboard. I can't lie.
Well, some people hate the keyboard, so
I mean, I like it. Yeah, I like it. It's good. So you're working at Apple at this point. Like you've left NASA. You're working at Apple. What's it like working at like the headquarters of Apple?
I mean, Apple Park is beautiful. It's $1 billion glass building, so it doesn't get any better. I'll never work in a nicer office. I don't care how well my company does.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, number one company in the world, right?
Yeah, it's worth $3 trillion now. It was amazing. I mean, the perks were great. The office was great. China was great. The factory was crazy. We worked tons of hours. I mean, it was brutal job. But you're working at the best company in the world. Right. It's tough to complain too much.
So what was like your typical day like in Cupertino?
In Cupertino, wake up. I lived in San Jose or Palo Alto, depending on what time, and then would drive to work. Right. In my Tesla at the time. Nice electric car. Sold that. It's another topic, but drive to work, get there at 9 a.m., work till 5, doing spreadsheets, planning all the prototype builds for all these keyboard SKUs that we would do, trying to build the next keyboard, the next prototype.
So would you be in constant communication with the factory in China?
Yeah, so that would be 9 to 5 prepping all the work, and then from 5 to 10 p.m. we'd be on calls with China because it's opposite, 14-hour time difference, right? They're 14 hours ahead, and so at night from 5 to 10 was honestly the busiest time of the day. So that part was brutal because every night was the busiest night. The nighttime was the busiest time of the day, and so we didn't get that much time at night to do our own stuff.
Okay, so so interesting. So do they have any like perks at working at Apple, like at the headquarters that just people don't know about that like you really enjoyed?
Honestly, like perks at Google and Facebook are better.
Really?
Yeah, people would always complain. Like food's not even free; it's discounted. But food is really good.
They have like private chefs.
Probably the biggest perk that I had at Apple was flying business class to China back and forth so many times. Like I'd go once a month for 10 days. Yeah. And so flying, business class, you're eating steak, watching movies, getting paid on the plane.
That's not bad.
And you get to keep all those miles. So I'd racked up a ton of frequent flyer miles with United. Sure. And used them all now, but it's been a few years. It lasted me a few years. So.
Sure. So in China, and you said you're running this factory, right? Essentially is what you're doing? Yep. Take us through that. Like,
well, you land and they treat you like royalty out there. Yeah. So like because they're your customer, or we're their customer, right? So Apple pays them to build stuff. They wouldn't own the factory.
Interesting.
So I'm coming in there and they're trying to please me. They're trying to tell me, oh, these are the best keyboards we've ever made, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, okay.
And we're going on there and be like, no, this K key is terrible. This space bar needs work.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. And so, those days I'd be walking the line, like inspecting how they were putting together the keyboard, making sure they were doing each step
right.
the way we wanted. I'd be sitting in meetings with the management of the factory thinking about how many thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of units are we going to get out by this X time to make sure we're ready for product launch at this date, stuff like that. Sure.
And then you would go back to Cupertino.
Yeah, I stayed in the hotel I was there, and then I fly back to Cupertino to meet with the California leadership team.
Sure.
So.
And so then you would, what, after that? So obviously you're going to China to make sure that these keyboards are being created, how you guys design them to be created.
Yep.
And then you go back and you report, and then what? Is it like this long period where it's constantly going back till it's perfect, until it's like good enough to release?
Yeah, it's always ongoing because we're always launching new MacBooks, new keyboards. So it's like a never-ending grind.
And so how long before launch are you working on a keyboard? Like, what's the time?
Oh, about a year, I'd say.
A year, okay.
That I'm on it. There's even time before that where designers are just like, I'm not a designer. I just work with the designers.
Sure.
So where they're designing the next generation keyboard, which sounds simple because you think every keyboard looks the same, but it's actually pretty complex.
Yeah,
the inside of keys.
Sure.
We're not just doing the keycaps, but even the keycaps, like the painting process changes, right? The different paint vendors we're using there, because it's so complicated.
And they do all of that in China as well. Like you're in charge of all that.
Yep.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so you're working at Apple, and you're using your Chinese from your mission.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you probably got better. I mean, I don't know. Did it get better when you were actually in China, like constantly working?
Different, right? Because you're
using different words.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Factory lingo.
Right.
It's totally different.
Okay, so you're using factory lingo, and then you're staying there for 10 days at a time. How often would you go to China?
Once a month for 10 days.
Once a month for 10 days. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're there quite often then. Because how long did you work at Apple?
About a third of my time, almost half. I was at Apple.
Yeah, how long?
I was there for 3 years, but we went remote because COVID hit for the second 2 years. So it was really just the first year I was going back and forth to China.
And then after that, it was remote, and then you didn't have to go to China as much.
Exactly. Ever.
Ever.
No, we weren't allowed to go to China.
Oh, that's true. I guess you're right, huh?
Yeah, I was on lockdown. I remember I was flying on the plane over to Cupertino.
Yeah.
Or no, to China, and they're like on the intercom on the plane, like telling us about this flu that's breaking out in China. And I'm like landing. I'm like, this is no big deal. Like, whatever. Didn't think twice about it. Then 5 days later, I'm watching the news and Trump is shutting down all the flights back to the United States. I'm like, I got to get out of here.
And you were in China at the time?
Yeah, I'm in China.
Yeah.
I was 5 hours from Wuhan where they broke out.
Sure.
5-hour drive. And so I'm out of here. So I took the next flight back home and haven't been back since.
So how really it's been since before COVID. Okay, wow. So when you went back then, how quickly after you got back did everything shut down? Was it pretty
immediate?
Quick?
Yeah.
It was immediate. So you got lucky.
That was the end.
You would have been stuck there if you didn't get the flight?
I mean, yeah, it would have been stuck stuck for a period of time. Yeah. Okay. I don't know how long, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of wild.
Oh, that's crazy. So, okay, so let's see. Let's just take a break for a second. Is that still recording?
No space on the memory card.
Oh, man. Wonder how long we've missed this for.
Yeah, I don't know. We should wrap it up, though. I want to listen to music before we go.
Well, we're going to have to just go with your camera for the ending part, because...
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know how long we've got. Okay. So let's just wrap up with like kind of key points on like what led to success. Okay, so you finish your work at Apple, and you take a job at Podium, and you're working there, and and then now you're building your own company at this point.
Yep.
And you're trying to go the entrepreneur route, which is pretty cool, I think. I mean, I'm doing the same thing, just in a different field. So I think there's like qualities that we can both take that like we can use in our fields, or like people could like use in their own fields depending on what they're creating, or what kind of level of success they want to attain. What do you think has contributed to your success? Like if you had to give anyone advice, like, okay, these are the things that I've done to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the working hard.
Okay.
And keeping your vision in mind, like the end of where you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think those two things can take you pretty far.
Okay, interesting.
I think there's also like the optimism side of it where like you want to be positive. But I think if you just work hard and you know where you want to go, you can go pretty far.
So, I mean, was there ever a time where you just doubted though in yourself, or was it just...
Oh, every day.
Or do you think it's important though also to like completely just believe in yourself to a point of maybe delusion, but because you have that belief, you're going to work way hard because you know you can accomplish something?
I mean, I think life is up and down, right? Where there's like moments and you're like, I'm the worst, and there are moments you're like, I'm unstoppable, and probably there's some reality to the in between. But I think surrounding yourself with people that believe in you is super key too.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I keep a board of directors for my life. They don't know it, but they're on the board.
Yeah.
There's like 5 or 6 people that I like really respect.
Yeah.
And I'll call them up when I'm making decisions in life or like thinking things through. And so they're on my unofficial board of directors. And I think those kind of people are helpful to keep your vision, right. But then there's also like the more intimate people around you that are like, your family or your close friends, people or your business partners. I think it's important to bring people along with your success or with your journey, because like those are people that'll help you ride the ups and downs successfully.
Right.
Because it can be tempting to jump off on the downs.
Yeah, of course.
So
life's tough.
Yeah. And to also just like get too hyped on the ups.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah.
Well, I think it's dangerous if you're too high on the ups and you're too down on the downs.
So I think people like friends are important, or business partners. So
for sure. All right. Well, do you have any parting words for anybody that's
good luck to y'all
out there?
You guys got it. Work hard. Have that vision. You'll make it.
All right. Thank you, Dakota, for being on the
Thanks
Celaya
for having
show.
me, Austin. Appreciate
You'll
it.
have to come on another time another. Maybe we'll do like a fun one, like where we just talk about like old memories or something.
I'm down.
All right,
Count me in.
Thanks, bro.
Yep.